The emergency signal ripped through the darkness of space like a wounded animal's cry. On the bridge of Earth's newest warship, the Indomitable, Admiral Park Hyansu stared at the screen showing alien symbols he'd never seen before. The ship's computer worked frantically to translate the message coming from somewhere deep in the galaxy. "Admiral, I'm getting something," said Communications Officer Kim Sora, her hands moving quickly over the glowing controls. She was young, maybe 25, but one of the best signal operators in the fleet. "It's from the Galactic Council, sir. They're calling for help." Hyansu raised an eyebrow. The Galactic Council asking humans for help 5 years ago. These same aliens had laughed at Earth's request to join their fancy space club. They called humans violent Deathworlders who were too dangerous and primitive for their peaceful society. They said humans belonged on their violent little planet, not among the stars. "What kind of help?" Hyansu asked, walking closer to the main display. Sora's face went pale as she read the translated message. "Sir, their entire defense fleet is gone, destroyed. They're asking anyone who can fight to come help them." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Galactic Council's military. It had thousands of advanced ships with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Their technology was hundreds of years ahead of anything Earth had. If something could wipe out their entire fleet, what chance did humanity have? But Hyansu smiled grimly. He remembered the day the aliens rejected Earth's application. The Council representative had been so polite, so condescending. "Humans are too aggressive," they said. "Too violent, too unpredictable. You fight wars with explosives and metal bullets like savages." Now those same civilized aliens were crying for help. From the savage humans? "Sir, what should we tell them?" Sora asked. Hyansu looked around the bridge at his crew. These weren't the fancy, peaceful aliens with their clean energy weapons and perfect manners. These were humans who had clawed their way from caves to the stars through thousands of years of war, struggle, and survival. They had built their ships tough and their weapons deadly because that's what worked. "Tell them the Deathworlders are coming," he said. "Signal all ships in the fleet. Emergency deployment. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're about to show the galaxy what humans can really do." The crew jumped into action. Alarms started blaring throughout the ship as systems came online. The Indomitable was the newest and most powerful warship Earth had ever built. It carried weapons the aliens thought were primitive railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds, missiles packed with nuclear warheads, and armor thick enough to stop almost anything. Around them, the rest of Earth's deep space fleet began powering up. 50 ships total, each one built for one purpose: war. The aliens might think humans were primitive, but they were about to learn something important about Deathworlders. Sometimes primitive was exactly what you needed. The holographic projector flickered to life in the middle of the command room, and suddenly Captain Lee Minho was face to face with an alien he'd only seen in diplomatic videos. Ambassador Kethfer of the Zilani looked nothing like the proud, arrogant creature from those old recordings. His crystal-like skin, usually glowing with confidence, now pulsed with nervous energy. His large, multifaceted eyes darted around frantically. "Captain Lee," the alien began, his voice shaking through the translator. "Thank you for responding to our call." Minho had never seen an alien look scared before. The Zilani were supposed to be one of the most advanced races in the galaxy. Their technology was so far ahead of Earth's that humans couldn't even understand how most of it worked. Seeing this powerful being reduced to panic was deeply unsettling. "Tell us what we're dealing with," Minho said, leaning back in his chair. Lieutenant Commander Han Ju-woo stood beside him, taking notes on her tablet. Kethfer's crystalline face twisted with what looked like pain. "They call themselves the Devourers. We don't know where they came from or what they want. They just consume everything. Planets, ships, entire star systems. They turn it all into raw materials for their fleet." "How many ships do they have?" Gi-woo asked. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. We don't know. Every time we destroy one, they build 2 more from whatever they've consumed." The alien's voice was getting higher, more desperate. "Our entire defense fleet attacked them at the Rigel system. 7,000 ships, Captain. The most advanced vessels in the galaxy, Minho felt his stomach drop. What happened? Gone. All of them. In less than 6 hours. Kethfer's image flickered as his emotions affected the transmission. We hit them with everything we had. Plasma. Cannons that can melt asteroids, quantum disruptors that tear apart matter at the atomic level, energy weapons that can crack a planet's crust. But they survived. Goo pressed. Worse, they adapted. Their ships learned from each attack. By the end of the battle, our weapons were useless. They absorbed the energy from our plasma cannons and used it to power their own systems. Our quantum disruptors just made their holes stronger. Minho exchanged glances with Ji Woo. This was bad, really bad. If the galaxy's most advanced weapons couldn't stop these things, what chance did Earth have? So why call us? Minho asked. Our weapons are hundreds of years behind yours. For the first time in the conversation, Kethfer looked embarrassed. His crystalline features shifted color slightly. Your kinetic weapons, the ones we've always called primitive. Metal projectiles fired at high speed. Chemical explosives, nuclear warheads. You mean bullets and bombs? Giwu said flatly. Yes, the alien admitted, clearly hating every word. We think they might work because they're so ... so basic. The Devourers adapt to energy weapons, but they've never faced anything like what you humans use. Crude metal slugs fired from railguns, missiles packed with nuclear material. So primitive that it might actually work. Minho almost laughed. After centuries of being told their weapons were barbaric and outdated, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were begging for help from humans with their primitive guns and explosives. We need you, Deathworlders, Kethfer continued, his pride completely gone now. You're our last hope. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the human officers staring at the empty space where the alien had been. The silence stretched for several seconds before Giwu spoke. Well, she said with a grim smile, looks like being primitive has its advantages. The emergency alert spread across Earth's military networks like wildfire. Within minutes, every naval base, space station, and orbital platform received the same message, code red. All forces deploy immediately. This wasn't a drill. Admiral Park Hyansu stood in the command center at Luna Base, watching dozens of screens showing ships launching from ports across the solar system. The speed of the mobilization was incredible. Ships that had been in maintenance came online. Crews who were on leave rushed back to their posts. Reserve units activated without hesitation. Sir, we have confirmation from all battle groups, reported Fleet Coordinator Bae Soon-young. 50 ships total. All combat ready. Hyansu nodded grimly. 50 ships didn't sound like much compared to the thousands the aliens had lost. But these weren't alien ships. These were human warships, built by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. The fleet was an impressive sight. At the center were the dreadnought's massive ships, as long as city blocks, covered in armor plating thick enough to stop meteor impacts. Their hulls bristled with railgun turrets that could fire tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed. Slug weighed as much as a car and hit with the force of a small SLAS nuclear bomb. Surrounding the dreadnoughts were the missile cruisers, sleek ships packed with launch tubes. Their nuclear warheads weren't the clean, precise weapons the aliens preferred. These were dirty, brutal explosives designed to destroy everything in a wide radius. The aliens thought nuclear weapons were barbaric. Humans thought they were effective. Captain Choi Dai-yoon watched from the bridge of his destroyer, the Soul's Fury. His ship was smaller than the dreadnoughts, but just as deadly. It carried torpedoes, railguns, and enough firepower to level a city. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency, checking systems and preparing for battle. Navigation? How's our formation looking? He asked. Perfect, sir, replied Navigator Kim the Jin, her fingers dancing across the control panels. All ships are in position and ready for hyperspace jump. The carrier ships hung at the edges of the formation, their launch bays packed with fighter squadrons. Each fighter was piloted by a human who had trained for years to fly in the deadly environment of space combat. They weren't protected by energy, shields, or advanced alien technology. They relied on armor, skill, and pure human stubbornness. Admiral Park, to all vessels. Hyunsu's voice crackled through the communication system. Every ship in the fleet could hear him clearly. I want you all to remember something. 5 years ago, the Galactic Council rejected our application to join their club. They said we were too violent, too primitive, too dangerous for their peaceful society. There was a pause as the Admiral's words sank in. On 50 different ships, human crews listened with growing anger and determination. They called us Deathworlders, like it was an insult. Hyunsu continued. They said our weapons were barbaric, our tactics were savage, our very existence was a threat to their civilized galaxy. Another pause. The fleet held its position, waiting. Well, today those same aliens are begging for help from the barbaric Deathworlders. Today, we show them exactly what humans can do when we stop holding back. Today, we remind the galaxy why Earth is the most dangerous planet in known space. The Admiral's voice hardened. Jump in, 3:1. Reality twisted around the fleet as 50 human warships leaped into hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines of light as humanity's answer to the alien crisis hurtled toward the unknown. They were going to war, and they were going to win. The human fleet burst out of hyperspace like sharks smelling blood. One moment there was empty space. The next 50 warships materialized in perfect battle formation. Admiral Park Hyunsu gripped the command chair as the Indomitable shuddered from the hyperspace exit. Status report, he barked. Are all ships accounted for, sir? Reported Communications Officer Kim Sora. Jump successful. We're in the target system. The main screen, the sight that greeted them, was both beautiful and terrifying. 12 alien ships moved through the asteroid belt like predators, their dark hulls reflecting starlight with an oily rainbow sheen. The vessels were nothing like human ships, no straight lines or angular designs. Instead, they curved and flowed like living things, their surfaces pulsing with veins of light that ran from bow to stern. My God, whispered Navigator Park Jinwoo. They're beautiful. Beautiful and deadly, Hyunsu replied grimly. As he watched, one of the alien ships extended what looked like mechanical tentacles toward a massive asteroid. The tentacles wrapped around the rock and began breaking it apart, feeding chunks of metal and stone into the ship's hull. There. Eating the asteroids? Tactical Officer Yoon Sung-ho hunched over his console, fingers flying across the controls. Contacts bearing Mark 74, sir. 12 vessels, each one about the size of our cruisers. I'm not reading any weapon signatures, but their hulls are. Strange. They're shifting, changing, like they're alive. Are they aware of us? Hyunsu asked. Unknown, sir. They're not responding to our presence, just continuing to harvest. The Admiral studied the enemy ships. They moved with fluid grace, completely focused on their task of consumption. There was something deeply unsettling about watching them work. It was like watching a swarm of insects stripping a carcass clean. All ships, this is Admiral Park, he announced over the fleet channel. Target the lead vessel. Fire when ready. The human fleet responded instantly. Railguns across 50 ships charged up with a building whine that crew members could feel in their bones. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. Nuclear warheads armed themselves with soft electronic beeps. Firing, announced Yoon Sung-ho. The first volley was devastating. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons, screamed through space at incredible speeds. They struck the lead Devourer ship with the force of meteors, punching clean through its hull and out the other side. The alien vessel shuddered as massive holes appeared in its flowing surface. Behind the railgun rounds came the missiles. Nuclear warheads detonated against the alien ship's hull in brilliant white flashes. Each explosion vaporized huge sections of the graceful curves, leaving jagged tears in the once smooth surface. Commander Shin Hae-won watched from the bridge of the missile cruiser. Bison's hammer, as her ship's weapons found their mark. Direct hit, she reported with satisfaction. The target is breaking apart. The lead Devourer ship was indeed dying. Its pulsing lights flickered and went dark. Chunks of alien hull drifted away from the main body, whatever intelligence controlled. The vessel seemed to be struggling to maintain basic functions. "They're not adapting," Yoon Sung-ho said with surprise. "The aliens said these things learned from every attack, but they're not responding to our weapons at all." "That's because they've never faced anything like this," Hyansu replied. "They're used to energy weapons, plasma beams, laser cannons, particle accelerators, things that have patterns they can learn from. But we're just throwing chunks of metal at them really, really fast." The dying Devourer ship finally broke apart completely, its remains scattering through the asteroid field. The other 11 vessels suddenly stopped their harvesting and turned toward the human fleet. Their hulls began shifting, preparing for battle. "Now they know we're here," Hyansu said grimly. "All ships prepare for return fire. Show them what Deathworlders can do." The Devourer ships responded to the human attack with terrifying speed. Their hulls rippled like water, and suddenly weapons emerged from surfaces that had appeared smooth moments before. Beams of pure energy lanced out toward the human fleet, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a city block. The first blast hit the destroyer, Gwangju's Wrath, dead center. The ship's hull glowed white-hot as alien energy tore through its armor plating. Any other species would have lost the entire vessel in that single hit. But humans built their ships differently. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Damage Control Chief Park Jin-young, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red as damage reports flooded in. Sealing now. We've got atmosphere loss in sections 12 through 15. Captain Bae Minseok gripped his command chair as another energy beam struck his ship. The Gwanggu's Wrath shuddered like a wounded animal, but it kept flying. "Engineering, how are we holding up?" "Armor held, sir," came the reply from Chief Engineer Yu Song-ho. "Some melting on the outer hull, but the inner structure is intact. We're still combat effective." That was the difference between human ships and alien vessels. The Galactic Council built their ships to be elegant, efficient, and clean. Relied on energy shields and advanced technology to protect them. But humans had built their ships the same way they built everything else: tough, redundant, and nearly impossible to kill. The human fleet pressed forward through the alien energy barrage. Ship after ship took hits that would have destroyed any council vessel, but they kept fighting. The Soul's Fury lost half its forward armor, but continued firing its railguns. The Daegu's Vengeance had its entire port side scorched black, but its missile tubes kept launching nuclear warheads. "Sir, we're getting radiation readings off the charts," reported Sensor Officer Kim Hae-jin aboard the Indomitable. "Alien weapons are putting out enough energy to cook any living thing." "How are our crews holding up?" Admiral Park asked. "Remarkably well, sir. Some radiation sickness in the forward sections, but nothing fatal." On the destroyer, Olsen's Pride, Lieutenant Cho Suben laughed as she watched the tactical display. "The council observers are going crazy," she announced over the comm channel. "They keep asking why we haven't retreated yet." One of them, actually, fainted when we took that last hit. It was true. The few alien observers who had joined the human fleet were huddled in the safest parts of the ships, unable to understand how the human crews were still functioning. The energy levels alone should have killed every human aboard, but the Deathworlders just kept fighting. "The aliens are asking if we need medical assistance," reported Communications Officer Park So-young with barely contained amusement. "They think we're all dying. Tell them we're fine," Admiral Park replied. "This is nothing compared to a solar storm." That was the truth. Humans had evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. Deadly radiation from their sun, crushing gravity that made movement difficult, an atmosphere that could poison most alien species, and weather patterns that could level entire cities. Earth was what the galaxy called a death world, a planet so hostile that only the toughest species could survive there. The human crews fought through conditions that would have put alien warriors in the hospital. The crushing G-forces from combat maneuvers, the radiation from enemy weapons, the bone-shaking impacts from near misses, it was all just another day at the office for beings who had survived Earth. "All ships, continued the advance, Admiral," Park ordered. Let's show these devourers what happens when you mess with Deathworlders. The human fleet pressed forward, their ships battered but unbroken, their crews bloodied but unbowed. They were doing what humans had always done, surviving against impossible odds. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace to find chaos. Kepler Station, the Galactic Council's most important research facility, was under siege. Dozens of devourer ships surrounded the massive orbital platform like vultures circling a dying animal. The station's shields flickered weakly, barely holding back the alien assault. "My God," whispered Captain Kim Dong-han from the bridge of the assault ship Bison's Thunder. "Look at the size of that thing." Kepler Station was enormous, a city-sized structure that housed over 500,000 beings from dozens of different species. It was also the Council's primary weapons research facility, which explained why the Devourers wanted it so badly. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the station," reported Communications Officer Lee Jamin. "They're down to emergency. Power. Shields are failing." Admiral Park's voice crackled over the fleet channel. "All ships, attack formation. We're going in hard and fast. No fancy maneuvers, no careful planning. We hit them like a hammer." The human fleet charged straight into the Devourer formation. It wasn't elegant or sophisticated. It was brutal and direct. The aliens had positioned their ships in a perfect geometric pattern around the station, maximizing their firepower while minimizing their exposure. It was mathematically perfect and completely logical. It was also exactly what the humans were counting on. "Ramming speed," ordered Captain Park Sejin aboard the heavy cruiser Incheon's Fury, her ship already damaged from the previous battle. "Aimed straight for the largest Devourer vessel. All hands, brace for impact." The collision was spectacular. The human cruiser, built like a flying battering ram, smashed into the alien ship's elegant curves. The Devourer vessel, designed for efficiency rather than durability, crumpled like paper. Both ships broke apart in a shower of debris, but the human crew had already evacuated to escape pods. "Boarding parties, go, go, go," shouted Captain Kim. Dong-hai and his Marines launched from their assault ships. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that looked primitive compared to alien technology. Chemical explosives, projectile rifles, and handheld rocket launchers. The Marines hit the Devourer ships like a storm of violence. Sergeant Oh Kyung-min kicked open an airlock and tossed a thermite grenade into the alien corridor. The explosion melted through the ship's internal structure, creating a hole big enough to drive a truck through. "These things don't know how to handle close combat," he reported over the comm. "They're built for long-range energy weapons. Can't deal with us getting up close and personal." It was true. Devourers had evolved to fight the Council's clean, organized battles. They expected energy beams fired from safe distances, carefully calculated attacks, and logical tactical decisions. They didn't expect humans to strap explosives to their chests and run screaming into enemy positions. Fighter pilot Lieutenant Yu Hae-won found herself out of missiles and ammunition. Any sane pilot would have retreated to rearm. Instead, she aimed her fighter at a Devourer ship's weapon array and hit the afterburners. "This is Falcon 7, she announced calmly. "Going in for a suicide run." Her fighter slammed into the alien weapon at full speed. The explosion destroyed the entire weapon system and left a gaping hole in the enemy ship's hull. "You ejected at the last second," her escape pod tumbling through space as human rescue ships moved to pick her up, inside Kepler Station. Commander Zethany watched the battle through the observation deck's reinforced windows. The Zalani officer had never seen anything like it. The humans fought with a savagery that defied all logic. They used their own ships as weapons, turned their fighters into guided missiles, and sent soldiers into close combat with chemical explosives. "Commander, the humans are boarding the Devourer ships," reported her tactical officer. "They're fighting inside the enemy vessels." "How is that possible?" Zethany asked. "The radiation levels inside those ships would kill most species in minutes. Apparently not humans, ma'am. They're still fighting." More human reinforcements poured through the breach the Marines had created. They moved through the station's corridors like a tide of destruction, clearing out any Devourer boarding parties they encountered. These weren't the polite, civilized warriors the Council was used to. These were Deathworlders, and they fought like their lives depended on it, because they did. The space around Kepler stations suddenly erupted with new contacts. Thousands of them. The sensor screens aboard every human ship lit up like Christmas trees as the main Devourer fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a display that defied imagination. "Sweet mother of... ... whispered Sensor Officer Kim Hai-jin. Aboard the Indomitable, her voice trailing off as she stared at her readings. "Admiral, you need to see this." Admiral Park Hyan-soo looked at the tactical display and felt his stomach drop. 3,000 enemy vessels hung in space like a plague of metallic locusts. They were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, circles. Within circles, triangles nested inside larger triangles. It was beautiful in its mathematical precision, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "Sir, the Council ships are powering up their hyperspace drives," reported Communications Officer Kim Sora. "They're preparing to retreat." Park watched as the few surviving alien vessels began backing away from the station. He couldn't blame them. Any sane military commander would look at those odds and run. 3,000 ships against 30 battered human vessels wasn't a battle. It was a massacre waiting to happen. But Admiral Park Hyan-soo wasn't just any military commander. He was human. "Signal the Council ships," he ordered. "Tell them they can run if they want to, but we're staying, sir." Sora's voice was uncertain. 3,000 ships, sir." "We're outnumbered 100 to 1. "I can count," Park replied grimly. "But we didn't come here to run away when things got difficult. We came here to finish this." He opened a channel to the entire human fleet. 30 ships, 30 crews, 30 groups of humans who had volunteered to travel across the galaxy to help people who had once called them savage. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. I'm not going to lie to you. The odds are bad. Really bad. The smart thing to do would be to retreat, regroup, and come back with more ships." He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. They were all young, all volunteers, all willing to die for people they'd never met. "We're not here to be smart. We're here to be human, and humans don't run from a fight, especially when innocent people are counting on us. Target the command vessels, those big ones in the center of each formation. Fire everything we have," the human fleet responded. Instantly, 30 ships, many of them already damaged from the previous battles, charged straight into the enemy formation. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was completely, utterly human. The dreadnoughts opened fire first. Their railguns sent streams of tungsten rods screaming through space, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to crack a moon. But these weren't ordinary rounds. These were the experimental antimatter warheads that Earth's scientists had been developing in secret. When the first antimatter warhead detonated against a Devourer command ship, it didn't just explode, it tore a hole in reality itself. Alien vessels simply ceased to exist, along with everything within a kilometer radius. Space itself seemed to ripple from the blast. "Nuclear mines deployed," reported Weapons Officer Yoon Sung-ho. "Full spread, maximum yield." Human fleet, dozens of nuclear mines hung in space like deadly flowers. Any Devourer ship that tried to follow the humans would run straight into them. It was a classic human tactic if you couldn't win through superior numbers. You made the battlefield as deadly as possible for everyone. Captain Bong Vana watched from the bridge of the carrier Daegu's Vengeance as her fighter squadrons launched into the chaos. The pilots were outnumbered 50 to 1, but they dove into the enemy formation without hesitation. "Falcon Squadron is using debris as weapons," she reported with a mixture of horror and admiration. "They're ramming pieces of our destroyed ships into the enemy hulls." It was true. Human fighters, when they ran out of missiles and ammunition, simply grabbed chunks of wreckage and used them as battering rams. Pilot after pilot crashed into Devourer ships, turning their fighters into guided missiles. It was wasteful, brutal, and completely effective. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant by total war. The battle had turned into complete chaos, and that was exactly what the humans wanted. While the Devourer ships tried to maintain their perfect formations and logical attack patterns, human fighters were diving through debris fields that would have killed any sane pilot. Lieutenant Park Min-young pulled her fighter into spiral dive between two massive chunks of destroyed alien hull. Her ship's alarms were screaming warnings about collision risks, but she ignored them. The debris field was so thick that her sensors couldn't track all the floating wreckage, but that didn't matter. She was human, and humans had been flying through impossible conditions since they first left Earth. It's Falcon 3. What are you doing? Her squadron leader's voice crackled through the cum. Those debris fields are suicide runs. Not if you know how to fly, Min-young replied, threading her fighter between two spinning pieces of metal that missed her wings by centimeters. These devourers can't follow us in here. Their ships are too logical, too careful. They won't risk the damage. She was right. The alien fighters hung back at the edge of the debris field, unwilling to risk their perfect hulls on the jagged wreckage. But humans had learned to fly in conditions that would terrify most species. They'd trained in asteroid fields, solar, storms, and the chaotic orbital traffic around Earth's overcrowded space stations. Meanwhile, the Marine boarding parties were causing havoc inside the enemy ships. These weren't the clean, organized boarding actions the Galactic Council was used to. These were brutal, dirty affairs that used every trick humans had learned from centuries of warfare. Sergeant Major Oh Kyung-soo crawled through the ventilation system of what appeared to be the enemy flagship. His armor was scored and dented from the fighting, and his left arm hung useless at his side, but he kept moving. Behind him, his squad followed in single file, each Marine carrying enough explosives to level a city block. "Sir, we're approaching." "The main reactor?" whispered Corporal Lee So-young.
Ow!
"The energy readings are off the charts." Good-o replied grimly.
At.
"Means when we blow it, it'll take half the ship with it."
At.
The Devourers had built their ships to be efficient and logical. Every system was perfectly designed, every component optimized for maximum performance. But that also made them vulnerable in ways their creators had never considered. Humans had learned long ago that the best way to destroy a complex system was to find its weakest point and hit it with overwhelming force. O planted his charges on what looked like the main power coupling. The alien technology was beautiful, flowing curves of metal and crystal that pulsed with contained energy. It was probably worth more than Earth's entire gross domestic product. He attached a block of C4 explosive to it and armed the detonator. "Things think war has rules," he muttered, checking the timer. Time for a lesson in human creativity. The explosion chain reacted through the enemy vessel's power grid faster than the ship's safety systems could respond. Energy meant to power. Weapons and shields instead tore through the internal structure like lightning. The beautiful, efficient design became a liability as the ship's own power systems turned against it. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human Marines didn't fight fair. They used the enemy's own technology against them, turned their strengths into weaknesses, and applied centuries of hard-learned lessons about how to kill things efficiently. The destroyer, Olsen's Pride, was a testament to human stubbornness. Half the ship's hull had been torn away by a direct hit from a Devourer energy beam. The bridge was open to space, the crew working in emergency suits as atmosphere vented through dozens of holes. Any other species would have abandoned ship, Captain. Lim Jae-ho stood at his command station, his suit's faceplate cracked but still functional. "Weapons? Do we still have power to the forward railgun?" "Barely, sir," replied Weapons Officer Choi Jaime. "But we can give you one more shot, maybe two if we're lucky, and then make them count." The Olsen's Pride fired its last railgun round. Into the heart of a Devourer command ship. The tungsten slug punched through the alien vessel's hull and detonated its power core. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a small sun before the human destroyer's own reactor finally failed, leaving the ship dark and lifeless. But they'd proven their point. Humans didn't quit. They didn't give up. They fought until the very end. Using every dirty trick they'd learned in thousands of years of warfare, the tide of battle turned when the Devourer command ships started falling one by one. Their perfect formations began to break apart as human antimatter warheads tore holes in their fleet structure. The alien ships, built for efficiency and logical warfare, couldn't adapt fast enough to the humans' chaotic tactics. Sir, we're reading. Massive energy signatures from the enemy fleet, reported Sensor Officer Kim Haijin aboard the Indomitable. They're powering down their weapons. Admiral Park Hyunsu watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Devourer ships, that had seemed so terrifying just hours ago, were now fleeing in all directions. Their sleek hulls, once pulsing with confident energy, now flickered weakly as they limped away from the battlefield. "They're retreating," he said quietly. All of them. It was true. The remaining Devourer ships were abandoning their attack on Kepler Station and jumping to hyperspace as fast as their damaged systems would allow. Out of the 3,000 vessels that had arrived, fewer than 900 were still functional enough to escape. "Admiral, we're getting reports from all across the system," announced Communications Officer Kim Sora. "The enemy fleet is in full retreat. They're heading for deep space." The human fleet had been reduced to just 12 operational ships, but they'd won. Against impossible odds, using weapons the galaxy considered primitive, they'd defeated an enemy that had destroyed the Council's entire military force.